Hello, everybody. This is Roger Durling, Executive Director of the Cinematography International Film Festival, and I'm extremely excited today because you're not supposed to have favorites, but this is one of my favorite films I've seen this past year, and we have both the director, Thomas Vinterberg, and the star, Mads Mikkelsen, of Another Round, which is Denmark's official entry for the Academy Awards and is shortlisted for Best International Feature Film. It has also been nominated for Best Foreign Language Film for Golden Globe Awards, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the César Awards. And it won Best Film, Best Director, Best Screenwriter, and Best Actor at the European Film Awards. Congratulations, gents, and thanks for being here.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to start. With Thomas right away, and just when did this idea of the story come about?
Wow, it's at least 7 years ago. Some journalist told me that I'd made an interview with this person 7 years ago about the project. So 7+. but back then it was solely a celebration of alcohol, which then developed into hopefully a lot more than that over the years. And only for the last couple of years prior to the premiere, we actually worked consistently on the script. So, it's the kind of idea that has been coming back and forth, and then finally made it to the screen.
I was telling Mads before you came on that I have seen the film a couple of times, and to me it's such a celebration of life, a journey of self-discovery, and alcohol is like the MacGuffin that Hitchcock talked about. It's like the conduit for this exploration. Is that sort of the way that you saw it?
Right, that's sort of the way it turned into, yeah. We think it's more about inspiration, about life. We wanted to make a life-affirming movie, and yes, the alcohol becomes sort of a symbol for these things. I've been told by my wife, who's younger but also cleverer than I am, that what the movie's about. And she tells me that it's about the uncontrollable, which is things such as falling in love, which is beyond your control. You fall, and it's things such as being inspired or getting an idea, something you get which you can't prepare or buy on the internet or learn at school. It's a film about what's larger than the normal, measurable, scalable life. And to that respect, it becomes a film about life and inspiration, I guess.
Yeah, no, and about seeing things again in a different light, about recharging. There's so many interpretations. I mean, I told Mads I've seen it a couple of times, and every time I see it, I see something different about it. Mads, you were always going to be part of this project. Was the role written for you, since you've worked with Thomas before in The Hunt?
I guess so. He better say yes as well. Thomas wasn't written for me.
He was.
Yeah, I heard about it 6-7 years ago as well, and at an early stage where the pitch was alcohol. But I also knew, obviously, that would only be the Kickstarter for a film that is about much more than that. And so here we go. I'm tilting. Yeah, at that point, my character Martin was working as one of these guys in the control tower in an airport, which was obviously a base for a lot of funny moments if you start drinking there. But it evolved into high school teachers for a good reason. We wanted to have, Thomas and Tobias wanted to have these four friends together as much at the time as possible. And also the youth, the immortal youth, is always there. It's always present, right in front of their nose, and reminding these four characters that their life is not what it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, that was going to be one of my questions for you, Thomas. The idea of putting them in school. All four of them are teachers. You also, at the beginning of the film, you bookend the film with youth. They have the lake game, and then at the end they have the graduation.
Right.
Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah, I can. I guess these four men are all yearning for that weightlessness that you can achieve as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, being drunk and in love and have the life in front of you. Mats used the word immortal, and they, at this point in life, feel very mortal. So the kids works as a reflection of their own youth, I guess, and what they're missing. And we use them as sharks in the beginning, who smells insecurity from the teacher, and weakness from the teacher, and thus wants to get him fired. And then they unite with him in this sense of ecstasy and dance at the end. So the youth and the loss of the youth plays a huge role in this movie. The initial idea of putting it at a school was to elevate this movie from being one or two steps too silly into trying to achieve some academic level. and the idea of making them school teachers came approximately at the same time as we ran into this theory of sorts from the Norwegian psychiatrist Finn Skårderud. Mm-hmm. And so an educational surrounding fitted perfect for that.
And Thomas, in the story, one character dies and the other one leaps onto the unknown. Was that always part of the story, that we were going to have the two opposite reactions?
Right. We wanted one to die and we wanted one to fly. And because we don't want to give the answer to how much you should drink or not drink, or how you should live your life. This is a humble investigation of how it is to be in your midlife in Denmark, exposed to this experiment. And mm-hmm. Then luckily it has become a universal thing and people all over find themselves in this film. But we don't want to give answers. We just want to raise questions.
Correct. So Matt, how difficult was it to develop the different stages of the drinking? How did the four of you, and how did you prepare for I know you guys couldn't have been drinking during the set, but how difficult was it to prepare to play drunk?
Well, the experiment is very specific. They start out at 0.05, then they lift it and they lift it and they lift it a little more. So we made a little boot camp before we started shooting, testing out these exact specific levels of being drunk with the supervision of Thomas, of course. And we shot it, and we tried out some of the scenes. And it was very interesting because when you're in the midst of that, having a couple of glasses of wine, it's literally nothing. And a couple of more glasses, you can't tell the difference. There's no difference when you're in the midst of it. But when you watch it again the day after, you see the small details and you go, whoa, what's happening with the hands? What's happening with the language? Why is it slurring on that specific letter? And that was coming in really handy. It's not that we don't know how it is to be drunk, but for us to go up and down on the dial, and for Thomas to say, let's go up to 0.8. We had a very good idea what that meant, especially in the scenes where we were teaching the youngsters. So yeah, the boot camp was a key to that. And then we watched a lot of YouTube videos of Russian people drinking their heads off. And that was also, besides being insane and funny and heartbreaking, it was very inspiring because it showed us that the way, it's a risky thing for an actor. You can overdo it, and when you miss being drunk, if you don't nail it precisely, it comes across. But when you hit the stage where you don't care about the surroundings anymore, when you're that drunk, this is where people don't use their hands when they fall, and they do fall. They use their face. So we came up with a plan of having a lot of mattresses at the right spaces, right spots.
Thomas, I'm a big fan of your work, and I was admiring so much the camera work, the handheld camera, I cannot pronounce his name, Groblin Sturla Brandt did for the film. And what I was noticing is that the camera work mirrors the level of drunkenness, and also the color scheme. When the movie first begins, there's a dreary aspect to it, and as the movie progresses, it shifts. Can you talk about that progression?
Well, yeah. First, his name, Sturla Brandt Grøvlen. We owe him to pronounce.
Yes, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce.
Nice try. He's a smart man. He's a very sensitive cinematographer. He understands what happens in the scene before it actually happens. And the whole entire film is shot handheld, though he holds it very still at times. The philosophy or the method we've pursued was to try to depict the awkwardness and clumsiness of sober life when in the beginning of the movie, like the wrong moves, the noisy coffee machine that interrupts your sentence right as it's important, like a dance between two sober people where their foreheads hit each other instead of being smooth, right? And then when they start drinking, we wanted it to become smooth, as an airplane a large airplane taking off into the sunset. So colors come in, and quietness, and this nice feeling of self-confidence and calm. And then, of course, they start drinking too much, and then the camera evolves with the actors and the situations. But that's sort of the starting point of the camera work for this movie.
And then it swirls, and at the end, it's euphoric almost.
Right. The last scene, which is the only scene shot with two cameras, everything else is shot by himself. But there was a limit to how many times I could ask Mats to do that outstanding performance. So we shot with, and also the extras and stuff. So we shot with two cameras there, but that was supposed to be sort of as a catharsis.
Yeah. And
it was also important not that it didn't look too staged, that it didn't become a music video. It was supposed to look like it could really happen. So if Mats was on his way out of frame, and it should look like this scene would have happened even though the cameras were not on, then they would have continued dancing, which in fact they probably would on that day. It was quite ecstatic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mats, the one scene that I just love watching your performance is the one at the 40th birthday dinner. The camera stays on you as you start drinking the first sip of vodka, and you start listening to music that and there's so much happening internally that you are able to convey. Can you tell us about shooting that scene?
Yeah, it's also one of my favorite scenes, and I'm very impressed with you noticing the subtlety of what our DOP was doing, because it's not always they get acclaim for especially when they're so subtle as he was. And that scene was described like that. in the script format, that my character all of a sudden becomes isolated in the room, that we can hear the others, we can hear the neighbor tables starting to sing, but the camera would, make a journey closer and closer inside of the character. And I think that's the key for us to get away with this scene, because it's obviously it's not a classical way to show a breakdown. A breakdown will normally come an hour and a half within the film when you know the character, but Thomas wanted or insisted that we would get to know the character by having this breakdown early in the film. Very risky move, but thanks to the super well-written scene and the beautiful subtle camera work from Sturle, that's exactly what it does to us. But I was a little nervous that could we pull it off this early in the film, that he has not the biggest breakdown, but a small breakdown, big enough for him, and that's thankfully much because of the camera work.
Mm-hmm. Thomas, can you tell us about that scene and your approach to it? I also, there is the sound design where, we have the a cappella group in the background playing, and then all of a sudden the sound design takes over. And, I love to hear that, the anatomy of that scene.
Right. Well, first of all, I always wanted it to be a long scene. It's sort of inspired by the little bit of work that I've done on theater stages. And I wanted the scene to develop from 4 lonely people to 4 people very closely bonded through their journey with alcohol and nice food. And that takes some time. I also wanted to show Mads's inner life. And I also wanted to show how they can actually be as great friends at the end. And I wanted to show the effect of alcohol upon Mads's character in particular. That's why I put in the choir in the end. I wanted to show this feeling that you can have when you drink and suddenly the room opens up for you. So there was a lot of things I wanted in this scene. And even though those 4 actors, who are the best you can get, performed outstandingly and everything was perfectly served in front of the camera, it took a long while in the editing to sort of to make the miracle work. And it took a lot of sound design, even though every take with Mads was amazing and heartbreaking. It was a difficult scene because it was so long, and it was not supposed to feel long. And so it was a very challenging scene, and I'm super proud when people actually react positively to it.
But one of the things, if I may add, I think that is also beautiful about the scene is that in a classical way, when a man realizes something, you will take him, as I said, quite a few scenes to realize something, and then we anticipate a reaction from this person. But this was nothing of the kind. This is a man who's decided to come and celebrate his friends for his birthday, and in the middle of that, it dawns on him right there while we're watching it. It dawns on him that the train has left the platform and he's standing all alone on that platform. So it's a very unorthodox way of building up to this kind of a scene. But I think it's also the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It's 4 or 5 scenes put together as a dinner, which is a situation I really wanted to be in with these people. And as on a theater stage, you make cuts by suddenly changing the subject and sitting down, or stuff like that. And suddenly it was that kind of language we had to deal with. So there's a lot of balances that had to be followed, both by Mads, but also definitely by the 3 others.
Yeah. You were talking earlier about interpretation, and that, you want people to get out of it, but you don't want to explain it too much. But when I was watching that scene, and I mentioned to Matt earlier before you came on, the way you shot the vodka, that it was so, there was intrinsic interest and glistening. And then all of a sudden, when I was watching the film, I thought that the word for alcohol is spirit, and how it ties to the fact that his spirit he's lost his way in a way, and then all of a sudden that in that moment he's starting to reclaim his spirit, and I was floored. I was very emotional watching that scene.
And you're on track to what Tobias Lindholm, the writer, and myself got ambitious about halfway through writing the script, that the word spirit obviously means more than just alcohol. And it's even embedded in the word inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we're trying to combine the world of alcohol into the world of inspiration and life. It's all supposed to be in that scene. It's kind of a method scene in the sense that it's a scene that should show the whole movie in one scene, sort of.
No, it's
development from being lonely to be together, with a breakdown on the way, and it's all supposed to be there.
How long did it take to film, Matt?
That scene?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Did we do it over 2 days? Yeah, I think it was over 2 days. The scene is quite a bit longer on paper, and also when we added stuff. But it doesn't feel short, and it doesn't feel long now. It feels perfect. But yeah, 2 days of as Thomas says, there are different scenes within the scene, but we ran through the entire scene quite a few times, just to be absolutely sure where we were when we picked it apart a little. It was a great day. Yeah, two great days.
And so I want to talk about the dancing, of course. And was that always part of the script, Thomas? The idea that at the end, Martin was going to start dancing?
It was part of my script, but I met some reluctance here and there. No, I mean, I always wanted Mats to dance in this movie, because this movie was always for Mats, and I knew he could dance. And I felt that the element of weightlessness and this character's catharsis could be beautiful to convey in a dance. Now, having said that, I agree with both Mats and Tobias Lindholm that it's a bit of a stretch to have a school teacher suddenly ending in a beautiful ballet or dance as this is. So it took a lot of conversations to get to a point where we actually dared doing it. And what we did, Tobias and I, to make this work was to prepare for it throughout the movie. In the long scene in the beginning, they try to get him to dance. In other places, they constantly try to get him to dance. So there's an element, at least, of satisfaction to it when he finally gives in. Mm-hmm. Even in the scene, he's reluctant, and then he's going back, and then swoop, and then finally he gives in.
Yeah, that's what I love about that scene, is just there's a structure to it. There is there's a hesitation, and he does it, and then there's a whole movement to.
There's 3 steps: him teaching, him dancing a little bit, and then him surrendering, and then actually the 4th step, which is the ecstasy.
And go ahead. Sorry, Thomas.
That scene meant a lot for all of us. It felt like a beautiful catastrophe, someone said to me. Like someone died, and here Martin is dancing. And in my life, someone died too, and here Mats was dancing. So in many levels, this scene was the most beautiful and most sad thing I've experienced on a movie set ever. And so that day was very, very special, I have to say.
And Matt, what was your hesitation about doing the scene?
Yeah, well, what Thomas touched upon, we have a realistic film in front of us, and it might just come across as quite pretentious that a man starts dancing, at least in my world. So I tried to persuade Thomas more than once to make it a heightened moment, a fantasy, a drunken man's version of what he saw. But he was polite enough to nod and listen, but he was always very adamant that that Mads, he's just dancing for real. So yes, I gave in, and I'm not regretting that, because I think it is, as Thomas says, it's a very beautiful moment in the film. It's a man who's just lost something that he loved, and he just gained something, regained something that he loved. And those two contradiction emotions was exactly what we wanted to have in the dance. So it becomes much more about his inner journey again than it becomes about the aesthetic of dancing. And I think, again, that's the reason why we pulled it off. And it's true that it was, for me, obviously, it was some practical days, physical days, because I haven't done this for 30 years. But I could tell definitely that the scene was much more important than just what I felt and what I was doing. I could feel when I came in and we talked about what we just did, that there was a different, it had a bigger meaning for Thomas, and his wife was there as well, why we did it. And I absolutely knew why, but it was like two different worlds. I was doing it out here, and then it had a different impact in here when I came to the tent, which was, yeah, part of this brutal and beautiful journey.
And I want to, for those who are listening and don't know, you were a dancer.
Yeah.
You began as a dancer, and
Yes.
And that is because somebody who saw the film told me, like, oh, did they have a double? And I said, no, that's not a double. That it's Mads doing his own dancing. Yeah. How different? Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, but that was about 30 years ago now since I did it last time. So I am aware that my character is rusty as well, and we needed that to come across, obviously. So I didn't go into like heavy duty training. I stretched a lot so that I didn't get an injury, but I didn't go into dance training. But then and it was all perfect, because obviously he's rusty, I'm rusty. It's perfect. It's not about how well he dances. It's about that he dances, right? But there was a little fraction of me inside of me that got a little ambitious on my former craft. And I was like, didn't I used to jump much higher than that? But I had to throw that ambition away and just go for the inner journey.
And who did the choreographing? Was that you, Mads, that came up with the?
No, it's a young girl called Olivia that my daughter actually has been dancing with years ago. Well, she had a lot of cool. Once we found the song, we could really, the piece of music, we really start working on it. And she came up with some cool steps. Some of them a little too cool for me. I had no idea what that was, because that was like, as I said, 30 years ago. So we modified it to fit me. We added a can of beer, but she was very wonderful to work with. She came up with all these smooth little details, and then we implanted that into the scene.
Which, by the way, I have to ask, the can of beer that happened the way it. I mean, it's just perfect.
There is actually the very first take we did. I hit it so perfectly that it's like one of these things where you go, "Whoa, did you catch that?" It just went, I don't know, I would say 60 feet straight up in the air. But the problem was that the camera didn't see it. It was too fast. It just went out. So I'm not sure. Is that a real take, or did we cheat a little there? But,
well, let me just put things straight. First of all, there was no double, just so that there is no doubt. This is Mads, all of it, dancing. The can of beer, he hit perfectly in a take where the acting and dancing was a little less great. So this can of beer in the movie is getting the right kick out of the frame, but is then CGI'd into the frame again.
Oh.
You know.
Okay. Yeah, that was my question. If it was CGI, and you just
it's a mix between reality and CGI.
Oh, and now I'm disillusioned. I thought that Mads had
kicked. But Mads did dance, all of it.
Yeah, but we did kick it the first time. I mean, absolutely perfectly, but we couldn't use that take. And that would, just for the record, that's the only time Denmark has ever used CGI in history.
And Thomas, were you the one that chose the song, the Scarlet Pleasure life, What a Life song, because I mean the lyrics, What a Life is the lyrics are very, very poignant to the movie.
So I would love to say yes, but the honest truth is that my wife found this. She very stubbornly insisted for 7 months that I should use this song. She called from different cars and said, I'm listening to this song again, it's for your movie. While I was chasing expensive international rights all over the planet. And people ran away from it because it was an alcohol project and they didn't want to be related to that. And then I had a meeting with the guys and I needed, some small changes, and I fell in love with them and their music instantly when they changed it, and and now I feel it's inseparable from the movie. I feel it elevates the movie enormously. I think it's a fantastic song, and it's as if the lyrics has been written for the movie. So I don't know why I was so stubborn for that many months, but the credit goes to my wife.
What has been the reaction in Denmark? I mean, obviously is the official entry for the Academy Awards, and but just the average person that has seen the film.
People have, the cinemas were open in a certain time slot, and people ran to the cinemas to see it. Everyone, every age. Mostly women, actually. 60% was women, but the age difference was.
Well, the women were there to see Mads. So.
Of course, but don't tell them. But a lot of people saw it, and I think what I've heard from the cinema owners is that you had 16-year-olds sitting with a bag of beer, watching the film for the 4th time on their way out to drink. And on the same row, you'd have anonymous alcoholics who felt that the film was about them. And I guess the 16-year-olds feels that Mads is flying at the end, and some of these anonymous alcoholics would feel that he was falling. And the fact that Tobias and I insisted on having this movie being open, not moralistic, but as a survey of a kind, probably made it possible for that many people to watch the film. It's definitely the film I've made that most people have watched, as there was a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a great and overwhelming success for us.
Yeah. And Matt, what was your reaction when you saw the film?
It's always tricky to watch a film the first time. I always make sure that I watch it before I do it in a theater with friends and family, and so that's always a deal. So I know what we've done to change it, what's out and what's in. It's a very positive sign if you forget about yourself and just swim with the film, watching it. And that was literally what I did the first time I saw it on the big screen. I forgot everything about what we've done. I didn't look for details. I forgot I was in it. I just went with the film. And I think that's the strength that this film have. It can even cheat me. And I'm a professional liar. I forgot all about what the journey was. I was just watching this and joining these people on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Mads is always asking his wife and his family when he comes out, how was it? And they loved it, so that was good.
Yeah, of course.
And Thomas, how have you been feeling about all the accolades and love that the film's been getting, deservedly?
Well, as I touched slightly upon earlier, this film was made at the worst possible time in my life. I lost my beloved daughter while doing this film, and we made the movie for her. That was the only way we could continue. It was in her high school with her friends in her classroom. It was a tribute to her life, which was the only thing that could keep us going. So when this film wins awards and is being celebrated, and when I meet people who love the movie, it has a higher purpose for me. It's honoring her memory, which contains a certain satisfaction within this tragic time of me and my family. So this must be the most important film I've done ever, and will always be. So I'm very glad that these things collide, and that people actually like it.
Well, I'm so honored to have gotten this chance to talk with the two of you. It's a wonderful film, the two of you. You should be very, very proud, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
It was a true pleasure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.